Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. In our previous video, we examined how Arteta was able to pull Klopp apart at the Emirates, but Liverpool are also quite interesting tactically, as was Arteta's defensive structure and counter-attacking phases, which will be the focus of this video. So without any further ado, let's look at the tactics when Liverpool were in possession. So Liverpool were generally looking to build short through the centre-backs against the one-man press of Jesus. However, it wasn't really a one-man press as Arsenal quickly adapted. Often, either Thiago or Henderson would be the sole pivot and would see Arsenal switch to a back three. This would involve Tomiyasu tucking in alongside Gabriel and Saliba, whilst it was Saka from the right wing who would then join Jesus to create this 2 versus 2 against the centre-backs, whilst Odegaard would move onto the deepest pivot, either Thiago or Henderson. At the same time, White was highly aggressive, moving into this position ready to press Tsimikas, as was Martinelli on the left-hand side. So their defensive shape was actually a 3-5-2. And Arsenal knew that Alisson was more likely to try and find Van Dijk, who is their main ball-playing centre-back. So when he received, Saka would be looking to press from out to in, hoping to cut off this line. But at the same time, with Liverpool having the possibility of having a 2 versus 1 against Odegaard, Martinelli wouldn't start as wide as White did, and would look to tuck in at times, ready to cover both men. So this would tend to filter Liverpool down the left-hand side, where White could then look to press more intensely, whilst Thiago was covered by Odegaard. So this was the common Arsenal pressing shape, with Saka having come in off the right-hand side to join Jesus, so that the two centre-backs could more easily be pressed. But Odegaard also played a key role in looking to pick up Thiago throughout most of the match, or whoever was the deepest pivot. At the same time, we see how aggressive Ben White is, ready to press Tsimikas if the ball does come out towards him. And Martinelli tended to take up this tucked in position, so that he could either assist Odegaard in covering Henderson, or guard to press Trent, as the situation demanded. But this is not to say that this pressing structure was perfect from Arsenal. Particularly if Liverpool built down the right-hand side and Martinelli was dragged outwards, there was still the potential for a 2 versus 1 against Odegaard, so one of the men could be found. Or, even if Liverpool were building down the left with Martinelli tucked in, a pivot could get on the ball if they dropped all the way deep, as Martinelli could not track them all the way centrally, as it would leave too much space wide. And Odegaard would then have 2 men to track. So, they could at times still look to get on the ball. But for the most part, Arsenal's shape was fairly effective. So, to see more of the ball, Tsimikas would push higher up, drawing White with him, whilst Diaz could then push in more centrally. Thiago could then drop off to the left to receive the ball in a little bit more space. This was helped by Jota often dropping into the midfield, so that if a man did press Thiago, he could receive. Or, if he stayed deeper, it would either mean Thiago would have space, or Saka would then have to come across, thus opening up Van Dijk, who usually has great passing. So here we see that Thiago has moved to the left to try and get some more space, and it is Saka who is coming out to track him. Firmino had come on in this half, and he is already looking to move into the space vacated by Saka. So this is one of the ways that Liverpool looked to maneuver more space in the midfield. But it was also interesting to note that generally in possession phases, Tsimikas tended to push higher earlier than Trent did, who would either remain deep to be the third centre-back against a 2-man press, or at times push into this more midfield position. This would obviously help Trent to see more of the ball and help to exploit his passing range, but it could also have been a way that Klopp was looking to cover for Trent's defensive weakness at times, by getting him in an easier position from which to recover if there was a transition. But whenever Liverpool did make it past the first line of pressure, Arsenal seamlessly dropped into a 4-4-2 mid-block, with Odegaard being the man who would now play alongside Jesus. This shape could leave Arsenal defensively vulnerable at times, as if the two were looking to press, it meant that Xhaka and Partey were man-to-man with a double pivot of Liverpool. So, with Jota often dropping into the midfield, it would make it difficult for Arsenal to know when to sit off of a man and when to go and press. So we did see Liverpool exploiting this at times and looking to get men between the lines. So here we see Jesus and Odegaard forming the front two, whilst Liverpool still have the double pivot of Thiago and Henderson. But here we can see that Xhaka is already in a pressing position against Henderson, whilst Partey is much deeper. So for an instant before Partey is able to press, there is the potential of finding Thiago in room. But here Odegaard used his cover shadow well, so now Arsenal in a much more structured 4-4-2. And it's interesting to note that much like Arsenal, Liverpool usually attack with the front five, which would look something like this. As a result, when forwards make diagonal runs, it tends to draw the fullback infield, and one of Van Dijk's favourite passes is the crossfield ball to Salah, who will be free because of the movement of the other forward. But in this match in particular, Liverpool at times lined up in a genuine 2-4-4, meaning that firstly when Van Dijk received, he would be under pressure, and when he did go forward the switch, because Arsenal were basically man-to-man and the movement of the forward could be taken care of by one centre-back, Salah would already be picked up, making this switch almost impossible. So we see that Liverpool are building up with a back four, and neither of the fullbacks have pushed up particularly high yet. At the same time, both Saka and Jesus are applying pressure, so Van Dijk is already under pressure as he attempts the ball. But we can also see that Salah was man-to-man with Tomiyasu, which would have made that pass extremely difficult either way. And this happened a few times throughout this match. But as the game went on, we did see Liverpool much more willing to adopt that front five shape of theirs against the Arsenal back four, especially with Jota looking to drop into midfield as he saw fit, whilst Trent was not pushing down the outside, and would either come in straight into the midfield, or if Jota was dropping deeper, he could move more into the half space. And because Arsenal were willing to give up the ball at times, by dropping their midfield deeper they could look to cover these men for the most part. This also presented an obvious problem for Liverpool, as it left space behind both Trent and Tsimikas. And as Tsimikas tended to be the more attacking, we did often see Arsenal counter-attacking down this right-hand side, leading to many dangerous situations throughout the 90 for Liverpool. As with only a double pivot, they couldn't adequately cover across, especially as neither of these men are at their peak physically to continuously do this throughout the match. Overall, this was far from a vintage Liverpool performance, and Klopp will be hoping for a rapid improvement from Liverpool before they play City. Tactically, Arteta earns a solid 7 for this match, as while it was a big win, there were still problems in certain defensive moments. Klopp on the other hand will be disappointed, and it was fairly poor, earning him a 4, but drop your ratings down below.
I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you might enjoy the content available on my Patreon. Not only does Patreon help to support the continued production of content, as I am a one-man team, but it also gives you early access to videos that will come on the channel. You'll also get exclusive videos, get to vote on polls, and so much more. And it's cheaper than ever, no longer having a tier system, so everyone on the Patreon gets access to all the content. So head over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple to check it out.
But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.